Now that we are done with our back end, let us focus now on our front end. So let's start. From here, open app folder, just simply right click and open with VS Code. Now that we're done with our back end, let us work now with our front end. So let's start. From here, open with VS Code. Okay, so last time we managed to complete the API. So this is the code. So this time, let's focus now on the app. Now on our app, let's open that in our terminal. For this demo, we'll be using React. So since we're using on the current template, so let's install that by typing the following. Okay, so let me explain. So from here, we'll be using npx, and we call the function or the steps to create the React app. Now, notice this period here. So this indicates that we're going to install React within this folder and with the template of TypeScript. So let's start. Right, there you go. So to test this one, let us type npm start. And there you go. All right. Before we proceed with the entire coding, let us clean first this interface. So since we're using now this default React template, it would be best to clean this up. Now to clean that, let's head over to our source app.tsx, right? So from here, so let's delete some of this section here. So let's say you're going to delete starting from here to here, or rather, let's include until this entire section. So let's just skip this uh, class app. Okay, okay, good. So this time we have a clean interface in our browser. Okay, so what are the things needed for this one? So as for starter, we're going to make some folders and routes. Now, we'll be having a step-by-step display. So let's start first with our folders. So within our source, let's create two folders from here, or rather three. So first, init the components. Next, let's create also the pages. And let's create one more, which is the routes. Okay, so that's the first step. Next, since we're dealing with routes, let's install the React Router DOM as part of these requirements. So let's work on that. So from here, let's cancel the installation. Next, to install React Router DOM, we need to type the following. So let's just type npm install React Router DOM and then press enter. Right? So once done, let's clear this up. So what we want to do now is we need to wrap this React Router DOM in our index. So head over to our index, and from here, let's import the router. So for that router, let's call down the browse or the browser router. All right. Now with this one, let's copy this browser router and let's wrap up with in this section here. Now, with the help of our browser router, this will help us uh, achieve our routes. So let's work now with the routes. To achieve our routes, let us create first the pages. So let's start with home pages. So head over to this pages folder and create a subfolder. Going to name this as home. Then within home, safe to say that I'm going to create a new file here and I'm going to name this as home.txt. All right. So what are the things needed in this section? Now in here, we're going to add the following. But first, we need to import the, okay, so we have to import this one first, the FC. So since I'll be using TypeScript, so this should be from React. Okay, so since I'll be using a TypeScript, so better to say we need to convert everything to TypeScript. So let's start with home. And then from here, let's bring down the function fc equals to this. All right. So in here, let's assign a temporary display by simply typing return. Let's say we're going to start uh, adding a HTML tag with home. Okay, so from here, let's export that. Export default home. Right, so we're done here. So next, we're going to call that home in our routes. So head over to our routes. Then from here, let's create a new file. Going to name this as menu routes tx6. Right. So from here, let us import the FC as the FC. Okay, so let's import the FC. Also, we'll be needing the fragment, right? So let's get that from React. Okay, so from here, let's create a function called menu routes. right? So there you go. So this is how we import or create our routes. Let's continue this by typing export default no routes. Okay, so from here, but first we need to import the home. So we need to locate the home file, right? Now that we have our home, let us import that in within our menu routes. So by typing return, let's begin first with the fragment. Within the fragment, let's wrap up with routes. Okay, we need to import the routes coming from React Router DOM. So let's import that. So we need to import two from the React Router DOM. The first one is the route. The second one is the routes, right? So the first one, we already wrapped that in our routes. So from here, let's wrap now also the route. Okay, so what are the things needed? The first one, we need to set up the path, and then let's call now the element. Now for that element, let's copy this home. So from here, let's close now the tag. All right. So okay, so that's it for menu routes. Now that we have our menu routes, let us import now that in our app.typescript. So head over to our app.tsx. So from here, let us, okay, so it would be best, we need to convert also this one to TypeScript. So instead of React, let's bring down the FC. And then let's call the app. There you go. Right. Safe to say, we can remove this now. Okay. So from here, let us import now the routes. So I think much better to remove this as well. So let's import now the routes by typing import routes from. So let's locate our routes. Oops. There you go. So let's copy this one and assign that inside this return. All right. So that's pretty much about it. So that's the only requirements for our routes. Now to test this one, let's run now our React. All right. So here is our home. So our routes. is working. So that's it on the next part. Next, for our goal for this front end, since we're doing a CRUD operation, it would be best to set it up in a table. So let's work on the table part. So from here, head back to our home.typescript. Okay, so let's apply a basic table structure. Let's begin by typing table. Now, within the table, we have the head, so that the th head, and then let's wrap that with pr. So from here, let's begin inserting our header. Now for the header, we have the following. So we have the title, let's copy this one. We have description. Next, let's add a action column. So the first one is the edit, and the last one is the delete. Now within this head, we need to construct the body. Now for our body, let's begin by typing t body. All right. So within our t body, okay. So let's insert a test row. So what are the things we need from our test body or the t body? So first, we need to wrap that in a tr, and then so from here, let's just add a td since we don't know yet the value. So at least four. So one, two, three, four. So we'll be needing at least four of these td, right? So that's the basically or basic table for this one. Now to complete this uh, table, I'm going to insert a footer for this one. So within this section here, let's add a footer by typing t foot. All right. So this is the footer. Okay. Now on the head, I want to insert also a caption. So let's say from here, let's add a caption. Okay, so for our caption, I'm going to name this as my movies, right? Okay, good. So let's check this now. Okay, so there you go. So for now, it's a little bit okay, so there's a gap here. So anyway, so this is the first part. PH title 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So for now, this is the first part. So later on, let's build now the entry form and everything from here. So let's proceed to that. On our next step, we're going to install another package that will serve as a communication since we're dealing now with data. So this will help us to fetch all our requests through URL. So let's work on that. So first, we need to cancel this one and install by typing npm install actions. All right. So for us to handle this operation, we're going to create a new file inside this source folder. Let's call this as API Typescript. Just for this demo, we won't be using any Redux in this project. So just simply a basic connection between the backend and the front end. So for this to work, let's import our actions. Now there are two things that I want to include as well. So, or rather only one. I'm going to add this actions response, right? So there are a few things here that we're going to configure first. First, I'm going to set up the base URL. So this is a string. Now, if you recall, okay, so in base URL, if you recall our backend, okay, so better we need to run our backend. Okay, let's start by typing npm start. Okay, so for now, this is our base URL. Let's start with that. Okay. Added to this one, we have also our entry point. So this is the root URL, this one. So let's copy that one and place that here, right? So this is the root URL, wherein this is the URL that we always use whenever we do some connection. So next to that, let's create a function that will capture all those requests. Now for our first function, let's call this get newbies. Okay, so this is our first function. So to make it work, let's call upon the async. Then let's call a promise. Now let's bring down this actions response. Okay, so what other things here? So from here, let's assign this with API data. So this is the data type for this one. So for now, we didn't build yet the data type. We're going to create that after we finish creating our function. All right. So let's check first. Okay. So we'll get back to that. But for now, let's complete first the function. Okay. If there's an error, we're going to set that to any. Then let's throw a new error request or information if something happens unexpected. All right, so that's it. So next, now for this to work, let's call now the request by typing const movies. actions response. Okay, you can simply copy this one. Okay. So we'll bring down this data type, and then let's call the await actions.get. So let's call now the base URL plus the request. Now, for the URL for our get movies, let's set back to our API and open these routes. For that routes, let's copy these all movies, right? So that should be in this section. Okay, good. For our API data type, let's create a global data type for all sections. So since that is here, it's looking for the API data type. So let's declare that globally. So from here, inside this folder source, let's create a new file, and we're going to name this as type.d.typescript. Right. So at this point here, let's create a types for that one. So as part of the requirements. So let's begin by typing type, and let's copy that this API data type. Okay. So let's copy that, and then, so what are the contents needed for this one? So for this data, let's head back to our API. In our movie controller, this get all movies. Now, as you can see, there's a bunch of stuff here. So we're going to get that in general. So these are the general requests that we do in our CRUD. So let's say for the get all, we just set that to the status, and then we display all the movies. Now, aside from that, when we create the movies, like this one, notice here, I include the message, movie, and movies. Now, let's copy all those things and make it a summary to all of these things. So let's copy that. Okay, let's apply that here as our reference. Okay, so that includes the status, which is from the first one here. So I just include that. Okay, so either way, it will just populate later on. Now, what are the things needed, or should I say the reference for this? So for our status, let's call that a string. Same goes with our message. Okay. Now for the movie, will be needed a object for this one. So since we have two types of here, we have the movie and the movies. Now movie is the only the single data, while the movies, this holds the entire data itself. So let's build first the interface for that. So from here, let's declare the interface. And we're going to name this as iMovie. Okay, so what are the content? So very important, we need to follow the standard as we set up in our table. So first one is the ID. So this is a string. The next one is the title. Same, it is a string. And the description. So this is also a string. All right. So let's apply this now as a reference to our type. First, let's copy this iMovie and let's place that in here. Okay. So either way, since we're dealing now with multi-mode operation, possible this data here could be has a data or no data at all. So just to verify, let's apply a question mark. So this serve as a checking before applying this iMovie. Okay. Now next, let's apply also the iMovie here. This will hold as a object. All right. So that's only things that we need for this API data type. So while doing this, head back to our API TypeScript. Okay. So from here, let's complete our operation. Now, we have an error simply because we didn't return the values. So upon declaring this one, we need to return this in here. Okay. So that will complete our operation. Okay. So that's it. That's it for now. So this is the only thing we need for get this. So let's check one more. So don't forget, so this will be served as the global data types and types for this entire process. Okay, so let's remove this one. Okay, should be no comma at all. Okay, so that's it. So in our next operation, we're going to apply the same way as what we did just now. So, all right, so that's it for APIs. On our next step, we're going to call this get movies in our table. So let's work on that. To call this function, let's step over to our home. Okay, since home holds our table, so the first thing we need to do is to import that API. So from here, let's import that by typing import. Now for function, let's call the function this one. Let's copy that. All right. So from here, let's locate that from our API. All right. So that's the first one. Okay. Now doing so, this will fetch all our data from get movies. Now let's apply a use state here. So this use state will capture those data. So to use state, we need to declare first our use state. So from here, let's call or import the use state. Now for those who are beginners, just follow along. Okay, so what are the data needed here? So first, we need to declare a variable that will hold our data. So the first variable is we're going to call that as the movies. And then the next one is this one will capture those movies. All right. So for our use case, simply we need to add first the reference for this one. So for the reference, we need to import the interface. So as you recall, we already declared this. So we simply bring the iMovie. Okay, so this is the interface for this one. And then let's import that as an object. Now, as you remember, this iMovies was declared here, or rather here, in our interface. So we still need this reference to hold our data. Right. Now, to call that data, we're going to use another function from React, and that is the use effect. So let's import that. Okay. So let's copy this use effect. Okay. So from here, let's apply that by typing this one. Oops, that should be arrow. Okay. So what it does is use effect will trigger all the changes happen to a certain variables. Now, since we're dealing with use effect, we're going to create a function that will trigger this operation. So for that to work, let's create a function and let's call that const fetch movies, right? Okay. So how does this function works? First, we need to get our movies, and then so we have two operation here. The first is the then, and we also oops then, and also we will be needing also the catch. Okay, so as simple as that. Now for here, let's okay. So for our then, so in our then, let's extract following. So from here, let's capture the status and the data. All right. Let's assign this by using this arrow. Now we have few things here. So first we need to verify if the status is correct. So let's say if status is not equal to 200. Okay. So this will throw an error, right? So that should be the error. Valid request. Okay. So if anything but 200, it will throw an error. Now if there's a data, let's apply now in our set movies for a new value. So in here, we'll be needing only the movies. So let's extract the data dot movies. To complete our operation, let's finish this catch section. So from here, let's assign that to an error or error. Then let's display that in a console log. This error. All right. So let's save that. Now that we completed our patch movies, the next thing we need to do now is we need to add this now in our use effect. To test our data, let's capture that by typing console.log and let's get the variables which is these movies. So this will tell us if our request is was successfully fetched. So let's try working on this one. Okay, so make sure both the front and the end are running, right? So to view that data, simply right click and select inspect, head over to the console and see what's the output in here. So let's better to reload this page. Now for those who are first time, make sure you select this XHR and requests. So this will list down all the backend requests. So from here, okay, there's two things we need to check. So we have a few errors. Notice here, we have a cross origin error. So if you check this request that we made, okay, okay, seems this one is okay. So the only thing here is we have a cross origin request error for this one. Okay, so this is very typical to any requests made from the front end to the back end. Now, for this to work, simply we need to apply a cross setup. This will serve as a allow, or should I say, this will allow our front end to make a request within the back end. This is always a case of an error wherein two technologies running at the same time and performing a interconnection to each other. Now, to work on that, okay, for that to work, we simply add that in our backend. So let's head over to our backend. It should be in our index here. So let's install that package for that to work in our request. For that to work, so let's open this API into our terminal. So there are two things from here. So the first thing is we need to install by typing npm install parse, right? So that's the first part. Now on the second part, we need to install the TypeScript counterpart. And to do that, let's install that by typing npm install at types slash parse. So, oops, maybe not here. Since, okay, so I want to install this in our dep dependency. So let's complete that by typing the at type scores. Then let's add it the hyphen save hyphen dep. So what I want is I want to install that in our dep dependencies. Okay, so to check that, head over in our package.json. Okay, so notice here, the dependencies holds the normal course, while the types course here was installed in our dependencies. So just to separate those things so that we have a group of those belong to dependencies and the normal dependencies. Now to apply this one, simply added that in our index.js or TypeScript. So let's go back to that. Okay. So from here, let's import the course from course. All right. Now to use this course, let's apply that in our middleware by typing this.app.use. So let's bring down the package by typing course with this bracket here. Okay, so that's it. That's all we need for our backend. Okay, so everything is workable. Okay, so let's try now the requests. But first, we need to clear everything from this area. Then click reload. Okay, and there you go. So don't mind this one. This is only a typical from React. So notice the difference. Right now, we don't have the error regarding the course or course missing. So right now, we are pretty get our data. So you can see that by clicking this URL here and examine the JSON data. So, all right. So as of this time, this data is, or this request is working. So that's it for our first request. Next, for that to work, let us apply that data in our table. So go back to our home.tsxx. So this is the TypeScript. So from here, okay, so we know that this one is workable. So there's no doubt about it. Now for this to fully function in our table, let's bring down that variables in our table. Okay, so if you are used to work with table, typically we need that table to display in this body here. So this is the body section. But before we proceed on adding that variables, I want that data to be dynamic. So I want to extract this part and add that as a component. So let's create a component for that. So from here, let's create a new file and we're going to name this as movie item.tsx. Okay, so what are the things needed for this one? So the first one is we need to import first the FC. And then let's create a function. So from here, let's create a function movie. Okay, and then so from here, let's pass the variables for this to work. Okay, so these are the things that we need for now. So let's export that as a default movie. All right. So for now, since we don't have the props yet, we can simply remove this one. So that's also okay. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to pass now this movie. Okay, so I think we already have it passed it here. So the next thing is we need to extract that section, this one. Okay, only this section. And let's place that in here. So by applying return, simply we're going to return that request. So what are the things needed for this one? So first we need a variable which is coming from the table. So to do that, let's begin adding that. Oops. Okay, so what are the variables needed for this one? So just for this demo, I'm going to assign a temporary variable here that will hold that data. So, and then I want that to assign in here. Okay. So for that data, I want that to assign in here. So for this one, this should hold the title. This one should hold also the description. Okay. So for now, we don't have yet the edit and delete. So that's the first thing that we need to do for now. Okay. This should be here. Okay. So let's check very well. FC props. Okay. So yeah. So this is the variables needed for this one. So for now, we don't have yet the value for this. Okay. Okay. So next. Okay. So notice here, this one says movies does not exist on type. Okay. So before we receive this value, safe to say we need to also add props for this one. So let's create a props. So this will reference our value from the or the receiving value from our table. So from here, let's assign that to movie with the interface of iMovie. Okay. Now let's apply these props. Let's apply that in here. Okay, so there you go. So that's it. So this will reference our value coming from our table. Now, let's fetch that value now. Simply head back to our home that this home.tsx. Okay. Now that we have that value, the next thing we need to do now is we need to apply a loop. So in here, we're going to pass that value. So what are the things needed? First, we need to bring down the variables with this movie or movies, and then we need to map that. Now for the mapping, we simply have these values. First, we need to pass the movie with the I movie reference. All right. And then let's pass down or bring down this with an arrow. And then with this, okay, with this information here. So let's enter that. Okay, so we have this now. Okay, so let's check everything. So I guess I'm missing something here. So this one should have a, okay, we need to have a opening bracket here, and we need to also have a close for that. All right. So this is all we need for now. Okay. So using this mapping here, this will loop all the values from our movies. Now to complete this one, let us import our movie object or component. So remember that we created that earlier. So we need to import this movie in our home page. So let's head back to our header. And then from here, let's type import. Let's call now the movie item from. Now let's locate that by simply typing dot forward, dot forward, and that's under components slash movie item. So now that we have our component, let's call that component and place that in here. Here. Now for that to call or for that to import, simply we're going to apply the typical component assign like this one. Now what are the things needed in here? First, we need to assign a key. Now for our key, I'm going to assign the movie.id. Okay, so since this is unique, so this is much convenient to set as an ID. So next, remember that we assigned the movie in our component. If you remember here, we're going to assign a value to pass to our movie. So let's copy that here. So this is the one. And then for that value, let's add the movie. So this is the value from here. All right. And then let's closing that just like that. Okay. So notice here we have an error. Okay. So very particular. Make sure the type or the interface should be the same with this section here. So if you recall, under the types.bts, our format is with the underscore like this one. So let's copy that and replace this value here, right? So, okay, so far there's no error. Okay, let's try that first. Okay, so it says use a spec has a missing dependencies, which is this. Okay, let's head back to our use spec. So from here, since we're or assigning a variables within use spec, safe to say that we need also to apply that in this bracket here. All right, so no more error. So now let's check our browser, and there you go. Okay, so that's it, guys. Okay, so since this is infinite, okay, so I thought there's a problem. Okay, so yeah, so nothing, no problem at all. So we can close this now. So that's it. So for now, we managed to complete this value of fetching the data from our backend. So let's proceed now on the next step by adding the insert and the update. So that's it for the fetch movies.